Welcome to the podcast, season 7, episode 2. And today we're going to be talking all about blood glucose in more detail, what it is, why you should care about it, and how you can monitor it, and also sort of simple tips that you can do every day to help you stabilize your blood sugar. And yeah, so we're all here today. We're all in the same country. If you're listening, you won't see it, but Leon has shaved his dreadlocks off, which was quite a big move.
Yeah.
Wonder if that affects your blood sugar.
Maybe protein. Now it can be used.
His body weight's dropped.
Yeah.
Scale weight's down.
And then now more protein can be focused on other areas. No more hair.
Go to the muscle.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, blood glucose, like any biofeedback, it can be affected by so many things. And we were just talking about tattoos. So I could imagine if you were having a long tattoo session, like yours, Andy, 10 hours. I mean, no eating and drinking. That's a no for blood sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty. You're meant to be in a meditative state because it's done by a monk with a stick.
That doesn't sound meditative.
No, it's pretty painful, but as in like it's not stabbing things constantly because it just goes stab, 10 hours. But the good thing is with that style of tattooing, it's almost healed the next day. It's like insane because there's a lot less damage, unlike a gun, which almost tears through the skin. It's a bit more precise, but it just takes a long time of not moving.
Yeah, you're in like constant stress, fight or flight.
Well, that's the thing. It is, it's just like pain,
Yeah.
and like the next day you do feel knackered. It's like you've been running a marathon because. The impact, like I've done a lot of tattoo sets.
Internet. Oh, there we go.
I think my worst one was my foot, which was 5 hours of like agony.
Oh.
And then I was meant to go back to get some bits retouched, but I decided not to because it looks fine to me.
Yeah.
Like the bits in between the toes and stuff.
That's done.
But like the next day, my foot was really swollen and stuff. That's why I don't really fancy it. It took me about a week to get over that on the foot, but just because swelling, and you're always on your feet.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't ideal. So yeah, you're right. Yeah, big impact on recovery, really.
Big time. And when we're talking about blood glucose, you don't have to be a diabetic to want to know more about it and to track yours, because it just gives you that much more insight into your body. And I like it for many reasons, but one of them is, if you're someone who's always obsessed about aesthetics or looking a certain way, like tracking your blood glucose is such a good health marker, for you to focus on improving instead, or having that as your goal, because it's something that you can actually see. And the same as if you're someone who is always stressed but thinks that not, your blood glucose does not lie. It shows you a lot that's going on in your body, and just you can tie it in with all the other biofeedback that you track to give you a really insightful picture.
Yeah, also it's it's good to just keep an eye on it because you may not even know you've got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to me, you're poodling along when you look at blood test results, that's a bit strange. And then, a few things, but you don't have to be, to have blood glucose issues, be overweight. You don't have to, you don't need to, be sort of these risk factors. But what you need to realize is you can get various hereditary issues, or you could be just predisposed to diabetes. So the earlier you get on that, the easier it is to manage, healthier you can become, because the impact of high blood glucose on things like kidneys. With kidney damage it can occur, which then you don't want to be having to have dialysis later in life. So the sooner you can understand it, the better. And I think it's a relatively cost-effective thing. It's not it's not prohibitively expensive. You don't have to go to a consultant. You don't have to go anywhere. You can just do it at home. And it's relatively straightforward.
Yeah. So I guess first of all, maybe Andy, you can start off with this. Like, what is blood glucose? What happens when you eat food? Just the basics on that.
Yeah. So generally, blood glucose and glucose in general is the body's preferred energy component. So in the body, it is stored as glycogen in the muscles, glucose in the liver, and glucose in the bloodstream. So blood glucose is this free-moving energy source through the body to be sent to different cells to do their job. When it's not utilized, it's stored. And excessive, stored in glycogen, for instance. But it can also be stored as body fat. If you've got excessive glucose that isn't being used for energy, it will convert to fat and be stored for long-term storage. Because that's all fat is. It is just warehousing of energy.
Yeah.
And so essentially, so you have this blood glucose. When you go to need it, blood glucose is absorbed. Insulin, your body produces insulin from the pancreas, which then shuttles blood glucose to where it needs to be. T3 cells are what absorb this, and then that converts it to energy in the cells to be used. That's it in the most basic terms. Now, after you eat, you will see blood glucose spikes because you are taking in energy. It's then being put into the blood to be used. Then insulin happens. Now, what happens with constant high, either high food intake or sort of, especially high glucose intake, so a lot of carbohydrates, sugars, everything else, you'll see big raises in blood glucose, and then the body will keep pumping out insulin to deal with that high level of glucose. Yeah. So the pancreas is working overtime to try and control it. Now, long term, and this is where you get to type 2 diabetes, is your pancreas just gets worn out and can't produce insulin anymore. Then you have to go on to the insulin injections. Unlike type 1 diabetes, where your body just doesn't naturally produce enough insulin. And you're born like that. So in this one, talking about type 2, it's more generally a lifestyle thing. Although there is hereditary problems. Like for me, my problems with the T3 cells not uptaking as much blood glucose as they should. Mm-hmm. So therefore, I have higher blood glucose in my blood if I leave it uncontrolled. Mm-hmm. So you want to convert the insulin to convert that to into the energy that you need, rather than just floating around in your blood and then eventually being stored as fat. So it's about utilizing the energy. And the other thing is insulin, insulin, well, not sensitivity, what's escaping me, resistance. You become insulin resistant because that's the problem I've got is natural T3 insulin resistancy. It doesn't want to allow the energy into the T3 cell, and not for any particular reason, and just my body is an arsehole. You're not, but I love your body, but the T3 cells are a pain. So it can, on probably 90% of the cases is manageable through diet stuff, but because blood glucose is affected by what we intake, what we output. You've got to be you've got to be active to use up the glucose. If you've got all this glucose floating around but you're not active, there's nowhere to send it, so it just gets warehoused.
Yeah.
Yes. In a nutshell.
Yeah.
I'm going too much off on a tangent.
No. I think that's great. And generally with everything in our body, we've talked about that before, homeostasis. Our body likes things to be stable. So of course, when you eat, and even if you eat protein and fats, your blood glucose go up. It's not just carbs, but it'll go up and then it'll come down, and you want that to be pretty stable throughout the day. But what happens to a lot of people due to their lifestyle, how they eat, that kind of person who doesn't eat breakfast, forgets to eat this, or has just coffee for breakfast, that often causes a real spike in your blood glucose, which, as Andy just said, that signals to the pancreas to release insulin. And what it can do is it shuttles all that glucose into the cells really quickly, so then your blood sugar kind of
crashes.
And that's when you feel really like foggy headed, you're just tired, maybe hangry, and for some people that's their day. These like
spikes and dips.
Everyone calls it like the blood sugar roller coaster, and and it is, and that is a stress on your body when you do that.
It's easy to look at toddlers. You give toddlers a load of sugar, watch them run around mad for the next half hour, watch them then become really cranky, and then watch them pass out on the. That's the easiest way to look at it.
It's
the perfect example.
It really is, and I mean, the thing is, like with that, it's a vicious cycle, because when it crashes, you want more sugar, and so some people, that's what they'll do. And then if you're reaching for something which is very sugary, which is going to probably cause a big blood glucose spike, and that just leads to it again. And like Andy was saying, like if you do this chronically, that's what causes problems. It causes inflammation, which is sort of the root of many chronic diseases. And insulin resistance is just not a good thing. And sadly, I would say a lot of people live their lives like that. And so that's where managing your blood glucose becomes really important. And from a sort of a general population lifestyle perspective, if we're now looking at bodybuilders, and there's quite a few of you who listen here, this is such a good thing for you to do. I think especially if you're going into an off season or a build season where you are increasing your carbs, it can just help guide you, because again, like if you're someone like Andy, you'd probably just have to be a little bit more vigilant and structured in how you increase your carbs, because you can still do it, but if you're just pounding that food and it's not being used and partitioned effectively, for building muscle, for energy, and it's just going to body fat, you'll see a poorer body composition, amongst other things. And that can just be a signal to be like, okay, whoa, maybe you need to just pull your carbs back a little bit, or, be more structured with nutrient timing, things like that. And there are some supplements that you can use to help as well. So I think if you are a bodybuilder, it's a really useful tool. And also, I know, like sometimes after some, heavy sessions, you actually go the other way, you go hypoglycemic. And I don't know if you guys have had that before, but I've had it a couple of times. Yeah. Really horrible. Yeah. Like you just
in prep and stuff,
Yeah, especially during purpose.
You're doing cardio, morning cardio, and you've just got no blood glucose left. You're like,
Actually, on
cold sweats.
yeah, on
That's what- yeah.
deficits, you notice it very, very quickly. It's just even how you work, your productivity sort of dies out quickly. Even if you're like personally from working or reading, my brain just goes into like when I start, say maybe I'm doing a checking or reading a book and I read that line 5 times over and over, I just know, okay, this is it. I'm done. My
Oh, yeah,
brain.
your brain needs glucose. That's its
Yeah,
preferred
it's-
fuel source. So.
Exactly. But I do think everyone, when they're, and I did a post about it, it's about structuring how to use your carbs in a day, should really focus, and in the off season is no different. Predominantly your carbohydrates should be around when you're expending the most energy.
Mm.
That training window, or post cardio, or when you're most active. So I always say to people, pre-training, intra-training, post-training. That's when you want your most carbs. Yeah. Save a little bit before bed, but you actually, if you're not training till the afternoon, your first meal of the day probably is better to be higher protein fat. I tend to keep protein stable, but higher fat, lower carb, because you just don't need it. I'm not saying no carb, but lower, and then use the majority of the carbohydrates when you're going to need that energy. That way, you're utilizing the blood glucose effectively.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
true.
no, it's such a great way to do it. And then of those carbs, they can be more of the sort of simple carbs, like your rice, cereal, fruit, things like that. And then the carbs that you eat outside of that window can be your more complex, carbs, from a lot of carbs from veggies is great, from oats, sort of more of those kind of whole grains. And because when you exercise, like regardless of insulin, actually, your cells are more receptive to taking in glucose. So, it's good to keep that in mind too, why exercise is so beneficial.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, and since you're on food, I guess that's where like fast food really affect your blood glucose badly, because you've mentioned, the complex, simple carbs and really whole foods. But nowadays you notice that trend is like a lot of people, especially in the office, always opt for fast food, sitting down all day.
It's simplified. It's simplistic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then combined with sitting, so you're not using.
You're not using it.
Yeah. It's easy to do.
It is for sure. So that's, you can also look at, the glycemic index of foods there, which it can be useful, but people react differently to different foods as well, which is where monitoring your blood glucose can be very interesting. And that's why it's always important to pair, carbs with another macronutrient, or preferably like a balanced meal, to slow down, that absorption of the glucose, so it doesn't spike. So if you're just eating, or you just drink a soda with nothing, that's gonna cause a pretty high blood glucose spike there.
And I think people forget, like, some things they consume have impacts on blood glucose. We were talking the other day about coffee. And caffeine in general, and how that affects blood glucose. And it may be other things, like, it could be, like a bit of Robinson's, but actually there's still, some carbohydrates in there, I have noticed with Diet Coke, it doesn't change my blood glucose at all, actually. The caffeine levels are obviously not high enough for the impact. Something like a Monster, I tend to pair with foods nowadays. So I'll have it when I'm with a meal, like just after a meal usually. So I'm already digesting stuff, so it's going to have less of an impact. But generally, if you are on an empty stomach and you are using caffeine to pick yourself up, because rather than you think, I'm not going to use like a sugary thing because it's gonna affect my blood glucose more, or affect my diet more. By having caffeine, you can have a spike in blood glucose anyway.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because when like I started with JP, that's the first thing he did in terms of nutrition. He cut out any, because maybe I wrote out the plan and it's like, if I felt hungry, I'd have a chocolate, an hour later, maybe eat the meal. So he said, the way you've said you have your Monster with your, your meal. And so that's the same thing he did. Is like, have like structured meals. If you want your chocolate, which I have before I sleep, my last meal, so that digestion works on all your macros as a unit, and your blood sugar is not up and down every hour because maybe you had rice, you had your intra workout, it's, yes, you're eating good whole foods, good foods, but your blood glucose is just up and down. So
you want to try and keep that as stable as possible.
Yeah.
Know when the spikes are, and purposely have them. As we just said, training, or you're about to do a hike. Great. You're doing an evening walk. Have a meal before that, so you're actually utilizing. The other thing I say to clients is, every time you eat, spend 10 minutes after just having a little stroll around. Get the body thinking, oh yeah, a bit of activity. Let's use some of this blood glucose there.
Such an easy way to do it. I think that's such a good tip. Getting in just some movement afterwards, because the problem is when your blood glucose stays high, like it should come down, I would say, within 2 hours.
Yeah, within an hour and a half to 2 hours, it should be dropping down.
Back down to your normal level. So if it's staying high for like 4 hours, that's when you get problems. And like insulin affects so many other hormones. So for women, it's going to affect your sex hormones big time. For women with PCOS, the roots of PCOS is insulin resistance, and it kind of creates a vicious cycle here. When you are insulin resistant and not paying any attention to your blood sugar, it can increase your testosterone. It can cause estrogen dominance. It can cause a lot of problems. So insulin is a really important hormone to look after. And so if you are experiencing, or if you've listening to this and you're like, oh yeah, that's me, I have my coffee in the morning, then I'm out at the office or battling matatus to get to work because
extra
stress is a big one, as always. And it is interesting to see how that affects your readings, as is lack of sleep. All the usual culprits are there.
I think while we're talking about this, the other thing, it's not just type 2 diabetes. We should also mention gestational diabetes, because one thing, it is quite relatively common for women to become diabetic during pregnancy, and then that goes away after. But it also doesn't help when you are pregnant attacking the food like you're eating for two, because one of the people is not a whole person; they're a tiny little person, so we don't need a lot. But and that's the thing. There is a lot more hunger during pregnancy. Some more hormones all over the place. But you've got to be careful, because if you're snacking throughout the day because you're pregnant, your blood glucose is going to be all over the place, and it's already affected by the pregnancy. So it's very easy to become a gestational diabetic. But you can, if you look after yourself and follow the same principle, you can stabilize blood glucose relatively straightforward.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a really good point. So if you do want to test your blood glucose, you can buy what's called a glucometer, and you can get them from any chemist pretty much, or if you live abroad, from Amazon, most places. Sorry, there's a big airplane going overhead. And the actual machine itself is not expensive. I mean, it's what, maybe $20 less.
Yeah, you can get it for less than $20. Yeah, 20. Yeah, you were talking on average $20 to $30.
Yeah. It's depending on the
Yeah.
brand, yeah.
And then, you know, it usually comes with a little, I guess you call it the lancets that will prick your skin, and it's a sort of like a little pen that you put it in, and then you get some strips. And yeah, so the strips are expensive, sadly.
They end up costing more than the monitor. And that's how they make their money, I suppose. But if you buy on bulk, like, you know, through somewhere like Amazon and get it sent to Kenya, it can work out okay. I get my one back in the UK, but I buy like 1,000 at a time.
Yeah, no, that's the way to do it, because, you know, I mean, it's up to you, like how often you want to test it. If you get into it, it can be interesting, like to see how you respond to different foods. Then you might go through a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
like
mean,
when I first started, I used to do obviously fasted. Then I would do pre-meal, post-meal across all my meals for about a month, and then after that, I just do fasted. And you know, if I feel a bit off, I might do it midday, middle part of the day or between meals, just to make sure it's returning. But I know if I wake up and my fasted blood glucose is in good order, generally,
yeah,
it should be in a good spot. It's when it's when you wake up and your fasted blood glucose is, over 5, 5.5, say, nanomol. You have to do a conversion here to.
the conversion. So
I like the British nanomol though, because it's nice, simple. Under 5 is good in my mind. Between 5 and 6 is okay, but not great. When over 6 is,
I guess,
rubbish.
The easiest way would be to download a chart, I guess, if you're going to be doing
it. You can get it,
I have a chart.
The American system is like in its hundreds of deciliters.
It's milligrams per deciliter. So if you are using that one, then you want to be between, I'd say, 70 to 90.
Yeah.
And that correlates to about 4 to 5 of the nanomoles. If you are a little bit higher, it's okay. But you would, ideally you'd like it to be.
It's what we call sort of pre-diabetes, is at sort of 5.5 to 6 level on the nanomole, which is still, you can get it down. It's when you're consistently at that level. Eventually, it's going to be consistently above 6 and up to 7. That's at fasted. I'm talking. After food, it's common to be a lot higher. Even when it's coming back down. So it's not. It's just a case of when your fasted blood glucose. I always say I want between, really 4.2 to 4.5. And I'm happy with that. That's the ideal spot. If I'm under 5, I'm okay. I like to see mine nowadays at 4.5 and below. But sometimes I have a 4.6. That's okay.
I think so. I'm just looking at my chart. I think that correlates to like like the 70s. Like a 4.5 is it's sort of higher 70s. Yeah, which I think is a good. I think most people though would probably be in like their 80s, like between 80 to 90.
No, I was just going to say, so for a first timer, you suggest doing it fasted, pre-meal, post-meal. So let's say,
it's worth doing that. Just I was a bit geeky. I plotted mine in the chart into so you can see it over the course of a day. But the main ones are fasted, post all your meals, hour and a half to 2 hours post meal. Across your meal. They're kind of the main ones. The only reason I was doing before is I wanted to see what effect the meal would have.
Nice.
You want it to come back down to near your fasting levels, like 1.5 hours to 2 hours post meal. So so even if it is a little bit higher in the morning, as long as it is coming back down after your meals, like within that time frame, that's good. And of course, like Andrew was saying, it is going to spike, but you can see how like different foods cause bigger spikes or lesser spikes. And if it's
big spike, it's slow to come down. Or that's the thing. It's like how quickly is your body handling that? You may, if you do a blood glucose test that's still high, give it half an hour, check again, and make sure it's just coming back down. It may be just what you've eaten is just slower to, it really did spike your blood glucose, it's just slower to come down.
I'm definitely looking forward to trying it one day when we do like the pastries or like a nice like eat out something, or when I'm craving.
So I love the new wearable technology stuff. The type 1 diabetics. I don't know if it's available for type 2 type stuff yet, general blood glucose. I don't know, but like that, you can literally look on an app on the phone.
Interesting.
And it shows you everything. So every time you eat, you can see it on your phone. Like wow, how did that affect?
Yeah, because
we're just a bit geeky probably. Most general people don't actually need to worry too much about this, but I love that sort of carry on.
Yeah, I would love to get one.
I was just thinking sometimes you do tell clients these things and maybe it just goes over the head like that does this, but I think when they can see that data for themselves, it would be like Claire was saying, it can be game changing for a lot of people rather than obsessing over the weighing scale. So this will just
I think it's super important for say bodybuilding is to manage your carbohydrates properly. As in you don't want to be adding excess body fat. What you want to make sure you're partitioning your nutrients correctly. The best way to do that is knowing when to put those nutrients in. So like that sort of post-training meal, protein and carbs, you want to replenish your muscles, you want that protein to go to work. But it doesn't have to be as quick acting as pre-training. Pre-training, you want those carbs in and working. And the same with intra. Post, you can, a bit more fat in your meal will just slow down the digestion a little bit. A bit more fiber. You can slow it down, and then you just try and make the most out of your food. To work with certain, do its actual work. So I think that's important. What was it? Something else I was going to say, it slipped my mind. But come to me. So it's about sort of managing and partitioning. I know what I was going to say. When you start getting older, because of hormone fluctuations, your partitioning of nutrients gets worse anyway. So it becomes even more important when you eat. What you eat and when, because say for instance, as men get older, testosterone levels drop, therefore nutrient partitioning is affected, and you're more likely to put on body fat. You're more likely to be slightly insulin resistant or higher faster blood glucose levels. So it does then become even more important. And then women, hormones have just this massive impact on everyday life. So and nutrient partition is no different. So the more we can help with making it easy to partition those nutrients, better.
Yeah, and I mean, women is very interesting. So during the first half of your cycle, the follicular phase, when estrogen is dominant, you're generally more insulin sensitive. So I mean, I don't do this, but I might just for interest, you'll generally do better with carbs then. And then in the second half of your cycle, in the luteal phase, when progesterone is hopefully higher, you will be more insulin resistant. So, won't deal as well with carbs. So some women do, set their nutrition up, with their cycle, like more carbs in the first half, less in the second half. But another thing that you can do, and I think we all do this, is just carb cycling. So more carbs on your training days, and then on your rest days, you go for higher fats. I mean, calories stay relatively equal,
Yeah.
because you want to recover. But again, if you are into bodybuilding a lifestyle there, and that is a really great way to manage your blood sugar and carbs as well. I mean, yeah, you do that, don't you?
Yeah. I do higher, well, obviously higher carb pre-post training, and then it goes getting lower on training days, and then rest days I just get the fat up, and then I do it like how Andy does it. I do added fat spray. We have the spray, so there's oil. I just 10 to 15 sprays on 3 of my meals. If I'm doing chicken meals, I'll add the fat, and then my beef meal, I just
it's got enough fat in.
So,
you can just have an avocado, Leon.
I have peanut butter. I do the butter with the oats, because oats already I don't do much, because anytime I do a lot of oats, because I do them raw, digestion is already slow enough. I do clear as macadamia, which is nice, soft and easy, and then
I cycle mac nut oil with olive oil on my spray on top of my meal, or teaspoon of nut oil, especially macadamia nut oil. Tasty.
It's easier to add the fats that way, but
this is what I say to all my clients. We're going a little bit off topic, but I say you're better off cooking with less fat than adding it back in after, because at least you're getting that fat unaltered. Because really, when you are tracking fats and with the cooking, you don't know how much is burnt off, how much everything else. So I'd rather people cook leaner. Like I tend to fry stuff. It's not really frying, but do it in water. Get a little bit of water so it doesn't stick. Get that bubbly, chuck everything in, and after spray it with oil, just to know, or put a teaspoon of oil and mix it in, just so I know I'm getting.
I think that's the same way we use oil, just for it not to stick. But it's all in food, I guess. How you, for like us, I guess we've been collecting the data and doing it for a long time. So adding the glucose it's nice data.
It is. It's very interesting, because if you have a shit night of sleep, it will reflect the next day.
Oh, massively. I've seen some terrible fasted blood glucose in myself if I don't have a good night's sleep. Like, if my sleep is less than 7 hours, my blood glucose is always a lot higher in the morning. No matter what time I have my last meal, need to have 7 hours sleep, and then 7 hours or more, and my blood glucose is good. The longer actually I sleep, the lower the blood glucose is when I wake up, which makes common sense.
We did my first measure when I hadn't slept well enough, and
he freaked out. So don't freak out over one measurement. You've got to do
it over the course of a period.
Slightly.
It's like, I'm diabetic. I was like, oh my goodness.
I had to tell myself.
It wasn't even that bad. It was 5.2 or something.
Yeah, but it's just the way the next day it really dropped, and it showed a clear effect of bad sleep, and I love it
for that, because you don't always see the negative effects of stress or bad sleep, but with this it's like you see it.
What was it you told me actually when you first did it? You said, I said, Leon, were you playing computer games last night? That's it. I knew, because it wasn't stupid 5. It was only a little bit over 5. I was like, I guarantee he was playing Call of Duty or whatever till late.
Yeah, like 5. Like how? What the? And then I woke up early because I just sleep just died.
It was a 5.2. I just got it.
It was a slightly freaked out, but it's when
you were like all day. You were like, I'm diabetic. Oh my god.
No, all day I was.
It's not even. I don't think it would even class as pre-diabetes.
No, it's not bad.
It's just bad the whole day.
Just something to keep an eye on.
93. That's
But the whole day, it really disturbed me.
Because he was like, I go to the loo a lot at night.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Do I really drink enough water? It messed with my head.
Yeah, it does. But the thing is, that's an important message for everyone.
Yeah.
You can get a bit too there's people, I think for the majority of people, it's good to monitor these things. If you're already a hypochondriac and you're worried about things, probably best not to because it's just something else. I think generally speaking, you've got to look at over a period of time. You can't do one day, you can't do 1 week. Same with blood pressure monitoring. I think I said to you, with blood pressure monitoring, you're best to do it as many times in a day, across the day, as you can over a course of like a week, just to get used to doing it, because you get white coat stress, where your blood pressure's higher, because it's just to do it. So the more you get used to it, the better. And that's the thing, like if it's your first time doing blood glucose reading, and don't read too much into it. Sometimes as well, and as I said to you, you got to make sure you wash your hands properly because there's sugars on your skin. That can affect the reading. There's other things that affect readings, and sometimes the monitors can be a bit quirky. Anyway, I've had to do a couple of readings before where I got one that was a bit high. I was like, that seems a bit strange. So let me just do another one. I use a different finger, rewash my hands, use a different finger. Oh yeah, that's normal.
Right.
Yeah, it can just be some of the little things that you don't think of that can affect it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I mean, like any biofeedback, you take averages.
Yeah.
So this is no different. And if you've had a bad stomach, that's going to affect it as well. Like if you've had diarrhea, things like that. So it does tie in really well if you are tracking, all that other stuff. But yeah, don't freak out. You can be like Andy and make a graph, or you can be like me, have a spreadsheet. I actually like the graph because then you can really see
your trend.
I put it into an Excel and then I convert it to a graph later.
Yeah, nice, I like that. And again, like you do not need to be taking, after every single meal. You don't have to. Like you can want. I mean, just for interest at first, like you want to get a good number of readings so you can get a good picture into your averages. And then if you are interested, just to see how certain foods affect you, then go for it. I mean, it'll depend on your budget as well, but definitely post meal. I quite like. I thought it was, I just like to do like even after training, and then that that last post meal and
post training and then post meal.
Yeah.
Post training.
See
how you're doing, because again, like if you're putting all your carbs there, you want to see how you're using them. That's a good one. And like some, a lot of it is experimentation, like different combinations of food. Are you someone who likes to keep some carbs for sleep? Does that work for you? Because you don't really
exactly. The only thing, as I say, with keeping carbs for sleep is that blood glucose overnight. But I always say, having a good night's sleep is as important for blood glucose management. So it's a balancing act. I always say don't use a lot of carbs at night, but use a moderate carbs. So it'd be slightly higher than, say, some of your other meals outside that training window. But you don't need loads to shut all tryptophan to the brain, So, it's finding what the sweet spot is for you to get a good night's sleep without elevating blood glucose too high.
Yeah, exactly.
And we should probably talk about some of the talk about medication. I had one client, and his weight just kept going up, and so I got him to do proper fasted blood glucose tests at doctors, and we found out he had some blood glucose issues. So we started him on something I like, which is berberine, which is a natural herb thing, and it's been in trials. It's shown to be as effective as metformin.
Yeah.
In trials, so that's what I personally take when I got it. I've ran out at the moment, but I'm actually just managing my blood glucose so low in carbohydrates a little bit. But when I'm proper into the off season and I'm really pushing, I'll always have berberine after every meal. So I'll take 500 milligrams of berberine with every meal, and that just helps with the glucose absorption in the stomach. It creates a buffer, so you're not creating too much blood glucose. A bit like how metformin works, but in a natural way. Metformin, very effective as well. He went on to metformin because it worked for him better than the berberine did, and now his weight's starting to come back down, as it's good. Got that under control. But and that's the thing. You may have a client where you are trying to push up cardio up, calories down, and it's not having an effect. You got to think a bit more than they're not trying hard enough. You got to eat less. Because sometimes it's just not that. Especially I knew eating simulation. I was like, I guarantee you've got a blood glucose issue. Let's get some bloods done. Let's speak to the endocrinologist. Let's see where we are with a few of these things. And then it showed up quite easy. But he was pre-diabetic. I said, all right, let's get that sorted before we do anything else on the training. And food-wise, let's just keep you sort of a maintenance thing. Let's see if we can, before we start saying do more cardio, eat less. Which can have its own issues. So so metformin does work. Berberine does work. Find what works for you. I'm not sure if you can get berberine in Kenya. I've never seen it for sale, but I have seen other GDAs for sale.
Yeah, so just
glucose disposal agents.
Exactly. So berberine is a GDA, glucose disposal.
Yeah.
It just helps you intake glucose into your cell. As is cinnamon.
Yes, that's the other thing. I like to add cinnamon to especially my oats and stuff.
Yeah, add cinnamon to your meals. That's what Leon did after that big reading. He's like, cinnamon
and pasta.
The thing to remember, and I always see this in people with diabetes posts. Once you've gone too far, no amount of cinnamon, especially no amount of cinnamon will sort it out. But if you are diabetic, and it can assist in blood glucose management. But there are other GDAs in the shops here. Like berberine is the most effective one.
Yeah.
If I can't get all the berberine, I will normally pick up another GDA from somewhere like one of the pharmacies or Health for You or somewhere. They're slightly less effective, but they still do a job. There's stuff in there that will help. But berberine's the best one. And then, if they're still not working, speak to a doctor, look at metformin.
Yeah. So it is a pharmaceutical drug. So, you're not going to Health for You and getting your metformin. You need to work with your doctor for that.
Yeah, that will be properly prescribed and in a management program.
I think metformin, it helps the pancreas make insulin. So it's not a GDA. So
no. It
is helping with your pancreas create insulin, and it is very effective. And a lot of women with, again, PCOS use metformin. They use it with your doctor, and don't just go and buy berberine because just because. You do need to be tracking.
Exactly. There's no point having, and this is something I said to a client about supplementation, unless there's an actual problem, you're deficient in anything. You don't need a multivitamin unless you're deficient in, vitamins and minerals. Yeah. Which most people actually are to a certain degree because of diet. But, it's worth, and this is something Dr. Dean says to me, there's no point taking something unless you actually need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then you can go the other way and have too much of something. So check your blood glucose. If you are a little higher, and we're not talking, talking nanomolar again, we're not talking above 6. But if you're under 6, between 5 and 6 on nanomole, you can start then putting things like berberine in to try and get you sub 5. And that's the thing. It's like where you are like maybe pre-diabetic or on the borderline of pre-diabetes, it's worth putting these things in just to see if you can manage it. If then it's not managing it, definitely go to the doctor. If you are quite high, you regularly up to sort of 6 nanomole, you're probably worth speaking to your doctor anyway.
Yeah.
Because as we said, it can flip easy to being type 2 diabetes. So you want to, I think for your own management, you want to be, it's where it's borderline cases. If it's high, and we're talking pretty high, go see a doctor.
Yeah, I think if they're also new guys starting to join the gym, because I remember like Trojan, everyone would do the weighing scale and that useless electrode machine. But
People still do that.
yeah, if you're starting, New Year's resolution, I think this would be something you can just start tracking and help you with your other data. And I think a nice addition to a lot of people who, especially if you're dealing with obesity and you're just trying to lose weight,
Definitely.
Healthier.
Also, have a look at your family because generally, we always say type 1 diabetes is hereditary, but so with type 2 diabetes, there's hereditary markers. People are more predisposed to it. Yes, diet plays a significant part in whether it becomes type 2 diabetes or not, but there is hereditary elements. Like for me, T3 absorption's low. So look at, and if you do have family members who have got type 2 diabetes, start tracking your own and understanding that better to tackle it early and get it under control, because it's only a problem when it goes long periods of time uncontrolled.
Yeah.
And the other thing is knowing that blood glucose serves a purpose. There's no point trying to go I'm worried about blood glucose, I'm going to go keto. We will, so that, no, everything serves a purpose. So it's about working out when best to have your higher, glucose spiking foods and when to have, lower glucose spiking meals, and then, structuring your day so you get the most out of what you're eating.
Yeah, no, I think, I agree completely. So, I mean, to summarize, there are some easy, tips that you can incorporate throughout your day to manage your blood glucose. Eat balanced, consistent meals. If you're a meal skipper, you're on that blood glucose roller coaster, which is a stress on your body. We do not want that. And as a woman, as bad sex hormones, try, if you're training, try and get the majority, like 50% of your carbs around that training window, and during your training, save some carbs for your last meal if that works for you. Take a 5-10 minute walk after your meals. Such a nice thing to do anyway, and you get more steps. Head to your chemist, or if you live in Kenya, you go to the My Dawa app. They have a glucometer there, which is a good one, and that will be delivered to you. And start with your fasted blood glucose in the morning. I have like a glass of water before I do it. Sometimes I just go for a little walk before to chill.
I have mine next to the bed. As soon as I wake up, I do it because I want to see what it is raw. Nothing.
Okay. Well, you can
just
be
like roll over. Sometimes I forget it's there, but I leave it on the bedside table next to my alarm, so I can just unzip it. It's a little pouch, unzip it, get it done. Some Chinese woman shouting at me.
or if you want to be like me, you can have some water and go for a little walk.
Yeah. But the fact is, it's to be consistent.
Yes.
With how you track. It's the same with what we talk about tracking food. And, choose a method, keep with it.
Mm-hmm. And then you do your post meal 1.5 hours to 2 hours after that. Check it again. Hopefully it should be back to around your fasted level. If you want to experiment with other ones, go for it. And I mean, I would work with someone anyway, for berberine. Like a coach, I think can be really useful, because maybe just making small adjustments to your nutrition and timing could be what you need, or maybe just to pull back a little bit with carbs. And I mean, if you're eating 150 grams of carbs, you ain't gonna need berberine. So it is worth working with someone who knows what they're doing with that. And definitely if your blood glucose is high, so that's like over 95, over 100, milligrams per deciliter or 6. You know, work with your doctor and get that checked out. You might.
The other thing is just be a bit more active.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a sedentary job and then you eat your meal and go back to your desk and don't do anything, you know, again, you're not utilising your blood glucose. A quick 10-minute walk, walk around the office, walk down to the car park and back, you know, wherever it may be, it's more beneficial than just eating, sitting down, not moving.
And even worse, compounded with that, then you're under a lot of stress at work. And you know, the stress response is releasing blood glucose into your system. So it's just like double whammy there. So just keep that in mind, you know, and yeah, build up a picture of your overall health, and you can find, you know, what you need to work on. And for most people, that is stress, that is sleep. But yes, we hope you've enjoyed this episode on blood glucose. If you do have any questions, you can contact any of us. And yes, next week we're hopefully having our colleague on who is a diabetic, and how she has managed, how she manages it, as she's also into training and nutrition and all of that. So stay tuned. For that one. I don't know, any parting thoughts, gents?
No, I think looking forward to having that conversation with Fleur about type 1 diabetes, because it is a challenge for anyone who's got type 1 diabetes. You know, it is a real roller coaster. Certain foods have effects and different, you know, and it's going to be really interesting because, you know, I'm not an expert in type 1 diabetes, I'm not an expert in type 2, but I am. It's very interesting the impact it can have, and I don't know if any of the people listening are type 1 diabetics, but they may get something, you know, get a lot from that.
Yeah, I think it is fascinating, and also the technology now that, you know, like the constant blood glucose monitoring, and which can be
amazing.
Yeah.
Connected to your Apple Watch. I think that's, you know, and I mean that's where keto can be useful for some people.
Yeah, definitely. If you need to. Keto has a place.
It does have a place. Anyway, so that will be next week. But yes, we hope you have enjoyed this episode.
Yeah.